Norman Finkelstein, and he suggested that in his research he found that the U.S. mainstream media was systematically omitting information regarding the willingness of Palestinian political representation and even militant groups to sit down at the table with Israel and engage in serious negotiations. He said that this was happening very often and that our media was doing a very, very miserable job of covering it. I was wondering if you have done any quantitative analysis of this, like you have with these other aspects of the conflict.
Yeah, we haven't done any specific studies on that, but it's certainly true. You know, from the very beginning, there were peace feelers put out by Egypt long before Israel finally took them. They were not even being reported. You know, I think it was in the early years. And finally, 8 years later, Israel finally decided to, you know, to buy its peace through the U.S. tax money to Egypt. So consistently, Hamas has given out strong signals that it has had long ceasefires lasting a year or more at times. So consistently, it is the Palestinians and Arabs that have sent out or announced major peace initiatives and major willingness to negotiate that is minimally reported in the U.S. media. One of the best books to give all that information has been so buried, almost nobody has heard of it. It's by a man named Donald Neff, N-E-F-F. He was a senior editor for Time magazine. He was their Jerusalem bureau chief a number of years ago. He has written 5 excellent books on this issue, and nobody's even heard his name. But in his book, Fallen Pillars, he goes into great detail about quite a bit of this. I think she's doing the calling on it. And then remember that this man was actually
right. He's third.
Okay.
Is there any hope for a completely unbiased media organization? And you know, what can we do to turn the biased organizations around? And is there any out there that will ever? How do you keep a media organization from becoming biased?
That's a great question. Naturally, we're not expecting or even hoping for perfection. You know, I try to emphasize that. Journalists will make mistakes. We won't be perfect. You know, it's not a well-paid profession, even if it were, you know, you're always overworked. So that's understandable. An error here and there, if it's not, you know, should be corrected when it's pointed out, but that's okay. So perfection is not what we're trying to approach. But something that's legitimate, that actually is giving the full coverage of what went on, we should expect, and we should demand that from our media. So I think the types of things, I think there's a lot we can do. We can contact the media ourselves. We can write letters to the editor and op-eds. Now what pro-Israel groups do is they pressure the media enormously. There are boycotts, there are advertisers canceling the media. They call them up as they do our organization and call them names and, you know, threaten them. There's so much pressure that after a while it's easier to just not cover Palestine. Or for a university to say, oh, we're just not going to have an event that causes too much trouble. So you can cause so much pressure that they prevent the coverage we should get. So the only way to counter that is to counter it saying we want full coverage. I never call them up and say I want pro-Palestinian coverage, I want pro-Arab coverage. You know, I just call and say, I want full coverage. Here's a significant incident that happened yesterday or just happened today. Here are the facts. Please report that. I think we need to be very proactive, too. When, you know, many of us follow the news so closely from the region, from the Israeli press and the Palestinian press, and from first-hand witness reports, that we can call up AP and our local newspaper and say, this just happened. You know, Tristan Anderson was just shot in the head, but nothing's out in AP. Please, you know, send your reporter and do an article on that. So I think we can do that sort of thing. In addition, we can and must tell our fellow citizens about the facts. Because the more that people become aware of what's going on, the less the media that are either intentionally or unintentionally skewing it, the less possible it is for them to do that.